Hi all. I guess it's going to be part 2 of Fun with CBs. For lack of a better name, better title. So, like on the last video, everything was pretty much coming to an end with, all the skunk hunts, and the clubs and all that. Everybody was just kind of going off on their own separate direction there. So, I just did a lot of sitting around and listening at home. I took it out of the car that I had and got a power supply for it, put it inside in the house, and you know what everybody puts their computer nowadays, that's where I had my radio. So I just, like I said, I just did a whole lot of listening and didn't do a lot of talking. And then I started discovering skip. Skip is when the radio waves go off in an angle and they hit the atmosphere and then they come back down in another state. That kind of got me really interested, in real radio stuff. Started logging, who I was talking to and where they were, and most of the time it was just, the East Coast. Wasn't enough power to do anything else with, so. At that point it was still stock, 4 watts, that's all it would put out. So, a lot of times people couldn't hear me, but I could hear them, and it was kind of fun because 2 people would be talking to each other and they lived like across the street from each other, but in a different state. So, we called that skip, shoot and skip. But the best time to catch some good skip was early in the mornings. Just as the sun was coming up for where I was living, to get the East Coast mostly. Every once in a while I'd hear Hawaii come in, at a different part of the day, but I was never able to talk to them. That was a little disappointing. So, and then at that time there wasn't a lot of interference from the sun. I don't know what it's called now, but we used to call it sunspots, and that came later, a couple of years later. It got to where we couldn't hardly talk across the street anymore. It was so much noise and static and all that. But and then the 40 channel came out, so everybody was hanging out on some of the upper channels. It was a little more quiet up there, and so that's where we would do some talking at that point. Some of my friends that have been watching the last video share some of their experience. They started their REACT clubs, and the REACT was Channel 9 for emergency. Lilly's sitting there staring at me. What are you talking about, Dad? So, yeah, REACT Channel 9 for emergencies. You could get on Channel 9 and tell them what the emergency was. If somebody was listening, they could help you out. So. They started doing that, and then others were just starting their own little clubs, and it was becoming more sophisticated at that point. Some radio shops had started popping up around town, so I hear some of these guys talking about their base stations and their antennas and all that, and that's when I really got interested in it. Like I said, so. Saved up my pennies and dimes, nickels and dimes, and finally got a decent base station. It was a, I can't remember what the name of it was now. Anyway, it doesn't make any difference. It was a real base station, and first I had a omnidirectional antenna up on the roof, and it was just on a tripod, it just wasn't all, all that elaborate or anything, and that's starting, we used to call it getting out. We started getting out a little bit better, and I was able to talk to some of the people at certain times, and so, that was interesting doing the skip thing, and you could follow it, from the East Coast around, depending where the sun was. That was interesting to me as well, so. And then, like everything else goes, once you get something, you're not satisfied with it. The more money you make, the more you spend. Boy, I tell you, it was not good for me. It got to where I was, you know, saving up all my money for radio stuff. So the wife was okay with it, but you know, after a while she got pretty sick of it too. So, but yeah, then I started getting into the better antennas and getting them higher up into the air, and I had a set of beams. We called them beams. They were Yagi beams, and you could, with a rotor, electric rotor, and you could turn them around to point in different directions, and with different angles, and that was a lot of fun at that point, because then I really started picking up some stuff that could isolate things, and direct that beam right at a certain spot. And then, of course, I wasn't satisfied again, so I ran into somebody that said they had an amplifier, and it had a picture of, it was like a music amplifier, but the lady that I bought it from said it used to belong to her ex-husband. He didn't want it anymore. She wanted to sell it, and so I went and looked at it, and she said that he had used it for his radio. So I went ahead and bought it. It was only like $10 or something like that, and it was 100 watts. Boy, what a steal that was. But that's what she wanted for it. She said she could care less about it, so that's what I gave her the money for. So I bought it, took it home, and set it all up, and got to playing around with it, and some of the local people around said, "Hey, what'd you do to your radio? Did you move? Did you move closer?" I didn't dare say anything about what I had done either. So, and then after a while, that got to where it wasn't, it wasn't powerful enough. So, and then, one thing led to another. You know how that goes. And then, well, I started driving. I got a job with a local company and started driving over the road. Well, that's when the radio really come in handy, and at that point there wasn't a lot of truck drivers on Channel 19, and there was still some riffraff going on, of course, but it was fairly quiet, and you were able to talk to each other a little bit, and we'd give each other information, and where the cops were, Smokey Bear, and all that CB jargon that I couldn't stand. And to this day, I hear somebody say, "Hey, good buddy," it just like somebody runs their thumb right up my back. I couldn't stand it. I'm not anybody's good buddy. That's what we used to say. And it was good to, to report accidents and that sort of stuff. And, and then, the longer I was on the road, the more people started buying the radios, and and then, there was that big song, I don't remember who it was now, CW something, all that 10-4 good buddy, and back door and front door, and pig pen, and all that stuff, Smokey Bear, and it just used to drive me right up the wall, So, and then it got to where, you almost had to be pretty close to each other to even hear each other, otherwise, people were just talking over each other, and whoever had the biggest, powerfulest radio is the one you could hear. Most of the time you didn't want to hear that, especially when you got kind of close to the truck stops. There was always something for sale, whether it was legal or not. It was all whatever you wanted to buy, you could find it at a truck stop. They would advertise it on the radios, Law lizards were advertising, and drugs and all that stuff was right there in the truck stops. Everybody could hear it. People going by in their cars, with their family in there, could hear it. So I started, hanging on different channels. I started getting on some of the upper channels, and I ran into somebody at a truck stop in Texas. They had a couple of CB shops in there, and I got to talking to the guy, and I was ranting and raving about, all the noise and all of the stuff that was going on with it, and he said he could fix it. So Said it was $100, so I gave him $100, and he we used to call it flipping and tweaking. He got me off on some 10-meter channels, and that's, you know, that's where it was really quiet. There was hardly anybody on those channels at all. It was a ham band is what it was, ham radio band. So I didn't do a lot of talking on that, you know, simply because I didn't have a license for it. So, but you know, it's not against the law to listen. But then, of course, you know, it wasn't very long, and then I wanted to start talking, and you know, I couldn't do it. You have to be licensed to do that kind of stuff. So, and like I said, it's not against the law to listen. But so finally, I just bit the bullet, and I got my my license at the absolute minimum. It was pretty tough back then. I mean, you had to study for it. You know, you had to know some Morse code and all that sort of stuff. It's not so bad now, from what I understand. I just let all that stuff go later when I quit driving and all that. But you know, that's when things really opened up for me when I did that. I got rid of that CB radio that was bootlegged radio, I guess you could say, and bought a real ham HR 2510 is what it was, 10-meter radio. So, you know, I started using that, and boy, it wasn't too long after that either where some of the drivers were starting to come onto the channels. You'd always hear people that, you know, some of the older drivers in a truck stops talking about it, and, you know, you could just walk up and ask them, you know, what frequency they hung out on and all that, and I got to know some of them pretty good. I don't remember any frequency numbers at all now, but I was asked to join a club that was called Blue Sky. Just a, you know, a private little club that we had, and I was assigned a number, and you know, long story short, I stayed with that for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months or so, and after that I just didn't drive anymore. I didn't want to drive anymore. I was tired and I couldn't get along with anybody. Didn't like the cops, didn't like DOT. So, you know, you know, I couldn't be behind the wheel for 30 minutes, and I felt like I had to lay down again, you know. So I just quit driving and got a real job. So that's it on this part. I'll talk to you again pretty soon. See ya.